simplified and customized because you asked for it. Here we go. What's up, friends? We're back today with another mixing template. That's right, this is the one that I get the most requests, the most messages, the most emails, the most comments. Will you please make a mixing template that doesn't have UAD plugins on it? Which is completely understandable since you have to own Universal Audio hardware in order to use their plugins. And they're not the cheapest on the block. However, they do have some pretty great sales that have been happening more frequently now. And since putting out my 2021 mixing template, I have gotten a ton of requests for all kinds of templates, and the most requested one has been, can you make one with all Waves plugins? Of course, if you only have Waves plugins, but I like to use a lot of other plugins besides Waves. And unfortunately, I did used to have a whole bunch of them, but now they require an upgrade fee even when they haven't even been updated. It's still the same plugin that I paid $30 for, and now they want me to pay an upgrade fee, which we won't really get into because they're still a very popular plugin company, and I know a lot of you like to use their products. So what I do have for you is a very Waves heavy template, but there's some other things here and there, but most importantly, there is not one single UAD plugin on this template. And I believe I've designed something really special. It's still got the great parallel compression technique in the 2021 mixing template, but this one has gone a little bit deeper into the effects realm. You're gonna love this. This one's also been a little bit more simplified in terms of the grouping track. Another thing that I got a lot of comments on was how to use the VCA faders. And if that's something that you're not familiar with or that you aren't really interested in looking up, this one has got a pretty standard grouping system with all of your individual tracks being sent to a certain assigned group. And then we've got those outputted to our main mix bus and our parallels. So it's all set up, ready to go for you. And the parallel compressions have also been calibrated. And if you're unfamiliar with that technique, then check out the 2021 mixing template or some of the other drum parallel compression videos that I have. I'll have them all linked down below. But enough rambling, let's get into what's going on with this new mixing template. This mixing template is gonna be probably a little bit more understandable if you're just starting to kind of venture into the whole template workflow. But this is actually a lot of bits and pieces were taken from some of my favorite mix engineers, Jakir King, Matt Ross Spang, Vance Powell. So this is something that people who are new to working with templates can really get their hands on and wrap their head around, but also for you seasoned mix engineers out there mixing a whole bunch of commercial records. I'm super excited about this template, so enough with all the rambling and let's dive right in. Okay, so the first thing that I want to go over here is the whole monitoring section and the mix bus. There were a couple of comments here and there that were about the whole routing system and how the audio is being played back through your monitors, so I want to just kind of go over that maybe a little bit more than I did on the last mixing template video. So let's explain that just kind of step by step and how every single piece of audio is traveling through all of these tracks. Everything that you see on here that has mix, that is the mix bus, which is this blue track right here. This is your mix bus. The track to the left of it here is what I call the mix fader. And some of these names are going to be a little bit different than the other template. It's just to make things just a little bit clearer and not really use my own language on it, just something that's universal. So every piece of audio is eventually feeding this track right here, the mix bus. This is where I have all of my mix bus processing. And I won't go into too much detail on the plugins that I'm using because I've already done that, and pretty much everything on the mix bus is the same. The track to the left of that is basically just a monitoring fader. It's telling me, I've got a VU meter here, it's telling me where my level is at that's actually going into the mix bus. That's why the ether is just an output. So the output of everything that's heading towards the mix, I can control here. In other words, if I wanted to control the entire volume of everything that's going to the mix bus, I can do that right here. This will bring down or up the entire mix. I have this there because I want to be able to know what my volume is going into the mix bus. I also have it as a little cheat. If I need to bring down or push up that volume, I can do that instead of tweaking every individual group here. Because once you like the sound of your mix, you don't want to have to go and back and just tweak every little thing. If you like the way that everything sounds, you want to keep it that way. But if you're hitting the mix bus too hard, this is a simple little way to bring all that down or to push it a little bit harder. Once we go through the mix bus here, we have the mix bus sent to two outputs. We have it sent to the print track and to the hot track. Now, I have already explained what these things are, but I'll go over a little bit more in depth here. The print track is an audio track. This is where you will hit record and print your mix. Now, I have this in input monitor mode because I like to have a reference track or a rough mix that I will drag onto this track here so that I can check back and forth between my mix and the reference. And all you have to do is when you play back, hit the space bar. When the I button is engaged here, the input monitor, you'll be hearing your mix. And when you take it off, you'll be hearing the reference so that you can easily toggle back and forth to compare the two. Note, to hear your mix, the I button will needs to be engaged at all times. Anytime that you want to hear your mix, push that button so that it is lit up green. If it is not, you will not be hearing your mix. So, besides the print track, we also are sending out to our hot track. This has a limiter on it to increase that overall volume, kind of give it a pseudo master feel, so that this is the track that you'll be sending to your clients. So when they play it on their phone, they play it in their car, and they want to put it on a CD, they can get a better understanding of what it's going to sound like mastered. They've got a volume comparison to whatever they're referencing to. To print the hot track, you do the same thing as you would do on the print track. This one is labeled H print. H for hot. Hot meaning increased level. So all you'll do in this case is hit the record button, and if you want to hear that one, you'll just hit the input monitor button so that you can monitor that while it's being recorded, and then you bounce that down. So to recap that real quick, these are two audio tracks. This is going to be the one that you send to your mastering engineer or back to yourself if you are also the mastering engineer, and the hot track to your client so that they can have a louder mix and compare it to something that they are familiar with. The last track that we have over here is just another monitoring track. I have the Isotope Insight 2, great plugin, not U80. I can check this and see what the output of the print track is. This is how I know what level I need to be at. Do I need to be at -13, -14, 11, LUFS before I want to go into mastering? How does it sound? How do I want to monitor that? This is where you can also put any other monitoring plugins. I like to use tonal balance for this as well. So there's no output on this. We're only monitoring the input of the print, which is the output of our mix bus. Very simple stuff. These are things that you won't have to change. That's the beauty about these templates. They're all set and ready to go for you. Now, if you have had your actual outputs settings to your monitors are a little different, all you need to do is go up to your setup here. And under I/O, you'll see where your monitor path is. The routing of that I have called monitor in the bus section because I've given it a bus name. Your monitor path, whatever you have it set to. Mine is output 1 and 2 on my interface. Since I gave it a bus name of monitors, that's my monitors left and right, I assigned that to map out to my output 1 and 2. So now my default output bus is monitors because that's the name that I gave it in my template. So that's your mix bus, monitoring, how to set that up, input, monitor, green button, lit, you got it. Moving on. Let's start at the beginning here. So if you've already watched my 2021 mixing template video and you've downloaded that, then you'll be familiar with the parallel processing for the lead vocals. However, since we aren't allowed to use any UAD plugins here, it was a little tricky. But I did find something that I like, and so let me go over that real quick. So again, we've got the 3 parallel processing tracks here. I've got everything going out the same bus 67. If you have a second lead vocal, I've got the bus 68 open, so you can just assign another set to bus 68. And all you'll do is just duplicate all 3 of these and set the input to bus 68. So for the plugins here, I have used the Shep's Omni channel for our crush, and the only thing that I'm using here is the saturation isn't even pushed up that much. I think this is something that you'll have to do to taste, really. Basically what we're trying to do is find something that's given us that kind of weight, that bottomness that the Fatso did with the tape sound. So I've got a little bit filtering off because I didn't want to do this to like the low sonic stuff. But I do like this thump switch here, and I've got it on the higher one of 4 dB. Nothing else is engaged here. The compressor is, but the threshold is at 0. I'm not looking to do any compression that isn't necessary. I just like the sound and the color of that. If you know of a better plugin in the Waves collection or any other non-UAD plugins that is comparable to the Fatso, let me know, or let everyone else know, and that way we can substitute this out and we'll get a better comparison. But that is the Vocal Crush, and the next one is a 1073, which is what we were using on the other one, the UAD version. Got some high pass going on here, and I'm just really using it for that drive, that saturation that the preamp of the 1073 gives us. So I've got that mixed in a little bit, had to pull down some here just to get it right. And a little bit of this goes a long way. You're just kind of giving it a little bit of grit and a little bit of fuzz on that vocal. Next thing is the 1176. This is just set to a pretty standard vocal setting. I'm getting about anywhere between 3, 5, and on those peaks it does come down to 10. Basically it's doing the same thing as the UAD one did, a little bit of different color, but it's something that does work nicely with all 3 of these going at once. And I do have all of this going to the vocal bus, which we'll get to in a minute and show you the parallel that goes along with that. Now I do have all of the vocal effects sends on the vocal clean track here, and we'll get to all of that in just a second. But first I wanted to go over all the groups that we have here. A little bit different than the VCA faders that we had, and we were just assigning those to all of our kind of individual instruments and doing our volume automation rides on the VCAs. That's all going to be done on the groups now. I've got an assortment of plugins going on. We won't go into too much detail on that, but a lot of them are Waves and the ones that I like. I do have a lot of the Kramer tape on there. You could probably substitute that for the, I believe it's the J37 plugin. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I used to have a lot of Waves plugins, but due to the upgrades, they've been kind of stripped from my access, and so I couldn't put them up here. But we've got a couple of things that I like for the bass here, for the drums, percussions, acoustic guitars, electric guitars. I've got a solo electric guitar track here as well. Our keys, which will include any sort of keyboards or pianos. Our string instruments, horns, any sort of other orchestral instruments will go here. Your synths and pads and any sort of effects, background vocals, and to our lead vocal bus. On the outputs of these, you can see that some of them have a plus, and that just means that they have multiple outputs. Of course, everything is going to the mix bus, and then some will be going to parallel processing. So skipping on down here, we've got 6 different parallels. We've got one for our bass, and we have an Opticom, which is a thrashy little compressor from Plug-in Alliance that I really like. Really good on drums. A little bit of that goes a long way. Drum crush with the Sound Toys Devil Lock. Drum bus compressor. You know, this is where I was really missing the UAD 33609, but I threw this newer Abbey Road's compressor on there, the RS124, or as another choice, the API 2500, which has always been kind of a standard for your drum buses. And I've also got the Abbey Road RS124 on the music bus. And for the vocal bus, I've just got a standard R compressor. And just like in the 2021 mixing template that has more of an analog routing feel to it, these are calibrated where we have the vocal bus adding 2 dB back into the mix, and the drum crush, drum bus, and music bus all adding back 1 dB each. Something else that's familiar to the other mixing template is some effects things down here. We've got the widener, an H3000 emulator, and the guitar pedals. Now here's where this mixing template can get really cool and very unique and customized. So back here on our lead vocal clean, we've got all of our sends going to our effects right here in the middle. We've got a monoverb, a plate, a room, a hall, a spring, and then in our delays, we've got the slap, tape, a throw, and something digital there. Now you can use whatever plugins you like on this. These are just the ones that I was trying to limit myself to and the ones that do work for me and that I use on a daily basis. So for the monoverb, we've got the Abbey Road plates. I've also got it for my plate. Those are gonna be 2 different plates. For the rooms, we've got the Valhalla Vintage. I kind of like their bigger sounding things, like their rooms and their chambers. So I'm also using that for our hall track, and then just a standard Avid spring reverb. And for our delay sections, can't go wrong with the Echo Boy. We've got some Kramer tape using its delay over here and a little bit of feedback just to give it that cool vintage flavor. Also, just an Echo Boy throw and something that's digital, something that's crazy. We've got the Valhalla Supermassive, and I've also got the Valhalla Echo there too. Now, here's where things can get really cool. So all of these are being sent from our lead vocal. So let's take our plate from our lead vocal. Very standard stuff. We're sending a vocal through our plate. Now, we want to add in some delay on that. Let's add in some slap. And we've got this set to a cool Sun Studio, old school, vintage slap there. Now, we've got these 2 going, but they're not really kind of working together. They just kind of sound like their own things happening and going out of the mix. Here's where it gets really cool. Now that I've got the slap going, probably should add a little room to it as well. So now this is headed back into our room sound right here. We're blending in a room sound that's being triggered by the output of our slap. So it's now sounding like everything has been glued together. The effects are now linked and glued, and super, super cool sounding. And you can combine these in any way you want. I can send that to the hall. I can have the tape that's now being sent to the room. And when I have that throw that comes along at the end of some phrases, I can add some room or some plate to that to give it a little something different so it all sounds together. You know, when we add a lot of effects in there, they sound cool when we're trying them out and we know a part that it will sound good in. And then it kind of just maybe sounds a little separated from the rest of the mix. This prevents that from happening. And this is not limited to just the lead vocal. You can add all of these over, or just a couple over that you're using for different things. You can add any of these over here that you want. So many combinations. This is super cool, and it's all ready, set for you to go. Everything's routed, everything's been set up where their sends are supposed to be, and just have fun with this. Try all different combinations. And lastly, we've got our drum reverb. I've just got the Valhalla Vintage again here, but you can put anything that you want there, your favorite reverb that you have. And this is gonna be for your snares, for your toms. I don't really like to add an overall kit to that. I'll usually just send directly from the snare or tom tracks, and preferably a sample if I think that needs a little bit more, space around it. And lastly here, I've got a chamber reverb, and I'm using the Abbey Road chamber plugin from Waves. It's set here to a warm chamber. And as you know, I like to add chamber to just about everything, even if it's just a little bit. Sometimes it works on everything, sometimes not. A lot of times I will not include the bass on that. But I do have it there in case you've got an acoustic bass and you're kind of going for like a smaller room setting. But I do like to add a chamber on everything because it makes it sound like it was kind of recorded together in some way. Even if it was recorded, there were days in between recording sessions, or even recorded in different states and different countries. Adding a little bit of chamber to each of those, all going through the same channel, can really kind of give you that feeling that things are recorded all in the same room. And I'm always trying to go for something that's in that realm and in that atmosphere, no matter how modern and digital it sounds. And that's it. That's the new template. It's really just for anyone who wants to get into a mixing template workflow. It's pretty easy to understand. This is some standard stuff that Grammy award-winning mix engineers use. There's nothing beginner about it. It's just a more standard version. Maybe that's what we'll call this one. We'll call this one the standard mixing template, and you can download it right now. You get the super cool customize your own effects tracks where you can get all kinds of cool combinations and make things sound really, really glued together and not so separated. You get the drum reverbs, the chambers, the effects pedals, the widener, the H3000 that you can add to vocals if they're feeling a little too thin, and all of the calibrated parallel bus compressions. And you get some extras here. You get the Opticom and the new Crush with the Devil Lock, plus super cool monitoring and routing so that you can have a mix sent to mastering and to your client for approval all in one sitting. So if you're getting into the mixing template workflow, this is the standard for you. I also recommend getting the 2021 mixing template if you haven't already. Both of these are super accessible, they're easy to follow, and they make mixing faster and a lot more fun. So now you can download this exact template with the exact routing, the exact plugins today. Link is in the description. Go get it, download it right now. You're gonna love it, I promise. If you think this is something you can use, hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, thanks so much for watching, y'all. We'll talk soon.